Today on PressWatch, we'll be talking about information, particularly the inaccurate kind during this election season, and how it is the polls were so wrong. All that and more on PressWatch. Hello and welcome back to the very last PressWatch of 2016. I'm your host, Jameson Kiefover. And joining us again on the show, we have Shelby Cashman of KOKH, Fox News, and Kate Houston, an OCU political science instructor. Glad to have you back, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
Great discussions. So let's just hop into our first segment where we're going to be talking about how people get their news and how they used to read newspapers, but now you can get your news almost anywhere, Twitter, social media. So there is a graph that I'm going to show you from the Pew Research Foundation, and it shows that 62% of Americans get their news from social media specifically, and they had broke it down into Twitter and a couple of different places. So this is the graph. So we have 62%, and then other mediums, which could be newspapers, online newspapers, and there's some problems that we're always going to see, but then we're also going to be looking at a clip right now. So let's take a look.
Since the election, Facebook, the largest social media network in the world, has been scrutinized for allowing an influx of fake political news, made-up stories such as the Pope endorsing Donald Trump, which shared hundreds of thousands of times despite being entirely false. Last week, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg said it was a pretty crazy idea that Facebook fake news helped Donald Trump win. That's provoked some backlash, including, as reported by BuzzFeed, from renegade Facebook employees who formed a task force to battle fake news. One saying anonymously, "What's crazy is for Zuckerberg to come out and dismiss it like that when he knows, and those of us at the company know, that fake news ran wild on our platform during the entire campaign season."
So what do you think about that?
I think fake news was clearly a problem.
Yeah.
And it's one of these things that, you know, it's new. We haven't experienced this before. And we've had fake news, but we've never had the extent of the problem of fake news. And so the social media platforms are going to have to find a way to, you know, adjust their algorithms to figure out what's fake, what's not, and how do you keep fake news from kind of being as influential as it is, if it's even possible.
It's going to be tough. It's tough I saw on that video that it had been shared by like a local news, and a lot of local news stations, we struggle with that too, because we're getting our information on national politics from sources that are national, CNN, everything like that. So we kind of tend to reuse what they have. So from a local news standpoint, it's tough. It's tough to vet that. You know what I mean?
What about for consumers of it? How is someone who's never been exposed to media literacy or taken journalism classes know what is right and wrong on, especially like Facebook, how they were saying that it was running rampant on their sites and they couldn't stop it?
It's going to be really tough.
They don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they don't know. And that's really the problem. I mean, it seems like there's been, at least I've come across on my Facebook feed, you know, people talking about, you know, here are all the, you know, the sources that are fake news sources. But even then, I mean, I still see stuff that is shared by people who should know better with respect to fake news. And I think we've just got to, I think it's our job on the education side to try to increase awareness of that. You know, always check your facts. Always make sure that the source of the information that you're providing, whether it's a term paper for school or whether you're sharing it on Facebook, it doesn't matter, is reputable.
Same for us in journalism. I mean, like I said, I saw local news stations on that clip retweeting stuff that was false, and so it's just you have to be
Even Fox News at one point
had
had
I mean, none
done
of us
something.
are immune.
Yeah.
None of us are immune to it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a level of diligence. I think it's going to be a lot of work, but
Yeah.
yeah.
You have to take that extra step.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's something that we should start teaching the next generation, or even like my generation, of how to do that, instead of, because, you know, media is so new and social media is so new that a lot of people don't know how to feed it out?
100%. But I also think the book's still being written, right?
Yes,
I mean,
true.
a lot of this is uncharted territory, and it's going to be kind of a sit, wait, watch, and see type thing to see how. I mean, you as an educator too, like teach stuff like this.
Well, I think that they develop it. You're always going to have a new website, and you're not going to know whether or not it's fake news until the information that they start putting out, you realize is fake. And until we can kind of have a better system of vetting and knowing, just go back to your trusted sources. I mean, that's the, say social media, like doing the things that share the things that are true.
That is a really good point, actually. If you come across something and you're kind of, and even for me, if I'm writing a story or something, let's go to my main sources, AP, things that I usually rely on and see if they have it or what they, you know what I mean? That's really
We'll
cool.
actually be talking about that more in a next segment. But right now we're going to toss to break. That's all the time we have left for this segment. Coming up next, we'll be back with our guest to discuss credible places to get news and why fake news was such a problem this year. We'll be right back. Welcome back to PressWatch 2016. I'm Jameson Kiefover. Right now we're going to talk about getting news other than the major broadcast stations and cable news outlets. So how do we stay credible, and also what are other options? So we kind of talked about this, but now let's talk about a bias that can possibly be in there. So let's look at a clip right now, and it's going to talk about how you're going to be filtering news through biases. So let's take a look at this.
A lot of people, including many conservatives, are concerned that Steve Bannon, who is the CEO of the Trump campaign and the chief executive of Breitbart News, that he used Breitbart News to, in their view, the view of conservatives, the view of Republicans, to mainstream white supremacist views, anti-Semitic views, racist views. A lot of people, including many conservatives, are concerned that
All right, so what do you think about this? And you mentioned this earlier, how he's a part of the Trump campaign. How do you think that this is going to affect things?
I think there's no question that Breitbart was a conservative and really a right-wing conservative organization that certainly has very questionable content in terms of some of the themes that they've talked about, whether it's racism or gender roles. Whether or not he can transition effectively and whether or not that bias kind of continues to filter through, I think will be interesting. But certainly Breitbart is a biased news source.
And at the end of the day, people are going to read what is in conjunction with their ideals. That's kind of, right?
Exactly.
You're going to read
exactly
what's echoing kind of your sentiment. So it's kind of hard.
So how do people get away from this? Because right now we see that they're not trusting CNN, they're not trusting those main sources that even local news is look to for the answers. So people are trying to look at Breitbart and other ways to get news. So how do you stay credible? Like some examples of other news sources that could be credible that you would look to.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about was the AP, Associated Press. I mean, that is something, so we come in every day on a newscast, right? And we're going to check the wires, we're going to check AP, and we get AP alerts throughout the day to our system. So something like that to us is a very credible news source.
Okay.
Reuters too, both good for us to use. I don't know what you guys use.
I mean, I think from my end is kind of a more political nerdy type approach. I think what we're looking at are things that either take a lot of different news sources and put them all in one place for you. So something like realclearpolitics.com, where you can go and you can find sources that are published on kind of across the spectrum. That's what I certainly tell my students to go look at. And then I'm a big fan of 538, Nate Silver's. It's kind of a blog, but Nate Silver was the head pollster for the New York Times for a long time before he went and started 538. He has a lot of political scientists who write for him, credible journalists who write for him, and it's really good stuff. And it does more of a numbers breakdown analysis, and to some extent takes some of the bias out of it. Yeah,
because that's what I was going to say. Because you mentioned, New York Times, Washington Post.
Yep.
Those articles can still be written with a level of bias. So when you get down to the data-driven stuff,
that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you for those answers. We're going to toss to break real quick. But whenever we come back, we'll take a look at polling information and why it was so wrong this year. Coming up next on PressWatch. Welcome back to PressWatch 2016. Time now to talk about polling and what happened this year, and whether inaccuracy might have led to voter apathy and lack of turnout on Election Day. So, we're going to be looking at a clip from Chuck Todd and his reaction to the polls and the election discrepancy. So let's take a look at this.
Welcome back, and boy, am I obsessed today. I'm obsessed that polls rarely showed Trump's number moving at all, always in the upper 30s or lower 40s. I'm obsessed that we were convinced the suburban collar counties around big cities would inoculate Clinton from the growing Trump working class white vote elsewhere. I'm obsessed with the polls that got it wrong, all of them. I'm obsessed with the exit polls that at least were released too early to show that it looked like we got it wrong. I'm obsessed with the fact that we listened when Hillary Clinton said she would expand the map and ignored Donald Trump when he said he would expand.
So, I mean, we've looked at a lot of different reasons why polls have gotten wrong and different things have been wrong. But what do you think, why, and what do you think happened here?
The political science answer is the models were wrong, that the polling models that they used missed things. So there were elements that they didn't have in there. I don't know if that's really my thought. I mean, I think, the models were probably wrong, but ultimately, I think they weren't asking wide enough group of people. You know, if you look at polling surveys, you've got about 1,000 people in a poll, and, you know, it might be a really good cross-section, but I think we under-polled people who really needed to be asking the questions.
And I also think on that same vein, people were scared to say who they were going to vote for, whether it was Clinton, whether it was Trump. They were scared of the reactions of other people. You know, if you said you were voting for Donald Trump, your coworkers, or if you said you were voting for Clinton, Trump supporters, they were worried about the backlash there. So people were scared.
A lot of people didn't even
kept
know
quiet,
either.
you know?
A lot of people were still undecided right as the election was happening. So that was hard to predict.
I think, you know, you look at the states where Trump performed really well and outperformed expectations. So your traditional Rust Belt states, your Pennsylvania, your Michigan, you know, Wisconsin, the voters that he won were white working class voters. And what you ended up, which were a traditional demographic group that should have kind of voted for Hillary Clinton. And so we can really point to that demographic group and say kind of what happened. And I think we underpolled them, but it's also a case that they probably specifically didn't want to talk about who they wanted to vote for because they have historically voted Democrat. And if they were a union worker, the heads of all those unions were supporting Hillary Clinton. And if they didn't want to support Hillary Clinton, then you're going against your own kind of organization.
You know, they say don't bring politics to the dinner table. I think that was even more so, like this year was very quiet. No one wanted to say. So
Even after the election, no one wanted to talk about
Right.
it. But do you think that people not talking about it and people scared of the idea, because I think that there was a stigma of, especially in the media, not wanting Donald Trump to be the next president, and so them having that bias might have reflected other voters. Do you think that that could have been contributed?
Like you mean rallied people to go out there and vote for Trump? Or?
So like the people who were looking at Trump and wanting more answers about him, but whenever the media was constantly not really going forth and asking harder questions, or they were always looking at Hillary Clinton. And just, you can look at CNN updates that give a bias towards Hillary Clinton, and in some ways we did see different biases all around, but do you think that that goes into people only looking at news that they want, that hypes up their...
Yes. And I think a big part of it, too, was a lot of the information that came out late in the game. So, you know, James Comey came out how long before the election and said he was going to reopen the case? I can't even remember specifically, but it was right before. And he said, we're reopening it. And I think that turned a lot of people away from Hillary Clinton, too, as well.
I think the issue that I think of is more apathy. And, you know, when you look at poll numbers and when we look at turnout numbers at the end of the day, you know, California had one of the lowest turnout rates across the nation. And, you know, why is that? Well, because people in California knew who was going to win in California. So you have swing states that have much higher turnout rates because it really mattered. But you have these other states that, you know, I'm not going to go vote because I know who's going to win my state.
That brings the whole electoral college. Everyone's talking about that too, I know, versus popular. But that's a whole other issue too as well.
So for polling, where do you think that we go from here? Do you think that they need to change the structures? They need to look back at what they did wrong and redo that for the upcoming election? How?
Professor, this is your forte here.
You know, they got it wrong, but they traditionally get it right. I think, you know, the question for the people who do polling professionally is going to be, you know, do we have to go back and redraw the entire thing? Do we go back and fix something that's broken? When I'm not really sure it's broken, this is just such an anomaly. You know, I was saying in class all year, this is not a normal election. And every prediction I've made along the way has actually been proven to be not true. I didn't think Trump would win the nomination. I didn't think Trump would win the presidency, and other steps along the way. And I think the pollsters feel the same, the same thing. And they're just going to have to go back and say, was it just this is an anomaly election, or is this really something that's broken? And I'm not sure it's broken.
Yeah, I would agree. This is her forte for sure, because I know a lot of your colleagues and friends probably were directly involved in polling, and it was a lot. Yeah.
So what about poll forecasting? Do you think that they should continue to predict elections so that places like California will still come out, even because they got the numbers wrong this time?
Great question.
Do you think
really
that they
good
should
question.
still
I think
be
they're
doing
going
that?
to. I mean, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep doing it. And the question is, do they change it or they not? But they're going to keep doing it no matter what.
I agree.
The horse race is what people pay attention to.
But do you think people have now understood, like, they're not always right, and I should maybe still do something?
Maybe it was a wake-up call. Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a lot of people who weren't happy with the outcome. Maybe this is a wake-up call to really actually go out there and vote. And yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that your vote does matter. I mean, even if we say, in a state that maybe you don't feel like it does matter at the end of the day.
Yeah,
so.
it does.
Okay, well, we're going to toss a break really quick. Actually, this is a wrap for the end of our show.
Oh, already? Man.
So thank you so much, ladies, for being here. This has been PressWatch 2016, a production of the Mass Communications Department at Oklahoma City University. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.